there's a broader fight going on here. I listen to a lot of news. I read a lot, too. I have for decades. I was always a nerd. I just never understood how important Harvard is, especially its foreign students, critical to America. Over the last few days, here are a few things I have learned. Without government-funded medical research at Harvard, everybody is going to die. All the international students will go to school in Europe or to Beijing or Hong Kong, and China will take over the world. Without Harvard, a $53 billion endowment, well, it can't save Harvard. It's not that much. $53 billion, nope. They really need the federal money at Harvard. Don't believe me? Take a listen.
So we got all the smart people from China and all our competitors here, and many of them stayed here to make America greater than the countries they came from.
The money that is being suspended is money that is overwhelmingly going to scientific research. It's not going to DEI.
Cutting research grants and funding, Harvard and institutions like Harvard are at the tip of the spear. There's a real risk of brain drain here. Those people, those talents are going to go elsewhere.
America's finished without Harvard. Lots of powerful people, of course, went to Harvard. Their kids go there, Barack Obama, Bill Gates, Zuckerberg, to name a few. A lot of folks in the media, too. They think Harvard's important. It's weird, though. All those powerful, rich alumni are on TV screaming about how important Harvard is and how evil President Trump is for freezing grants. Well, none of them, as far as I have heard, have been willing to open up their own wallets to save Harvard. Because remember, without federal funding, Harvard disappears. And what I think I never realized was just how good Harvard is at PR. But maybe they should stop reading their own press releases. They are not indispensable. Just ask Elon Musk. Harvard loves the fight with Trump as much as Trump loves the fight with them. And Trump basically acknowledged that earlier today.
Number one, I think they should have a cap of maybe around 15%, not 31%. I want to make sure that the foreign students are people that can love our country. And Harvard has to understand the last thing I want to do is hurt them. They're hurting themselves. They're fighting. But Harvard wants to fight. They want to show how smart they are, and they're getting their ass kicked.
Harvard's trying to convince all of us normal folks of their nobility, that they are somehow special. Trump is proving they are not, and Harvard's also proving they're not special in their own right. With that, we bring in Niall Stanage to prove me wrong. He is here, White House columnist for The Hill. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Let me tell you, you're going to tell me that we need to support and bring in students with close ties to the Chinese Communist Party to study aerospace engineering at MIT to make America safer.
If there was a degree in straw manning from Harvard, you would win that easily with that kind of claim. Look, your introduction there was suggesting that the government is providing charity to Harvard University. It's not giving them money to buy candy with. It's to invest in research that can benefit the nation as a whole. Been a whole lot of talk about all the negatives about Harvard. Just last month, 3 people from Harvard won the Breakthrough Prize, the Oscars of Sciences. One of them, a guy called David Liu, son of Taiwanese immigrants, is what is known as a gene editor. What that means is, much more excitingly, he can change or have the ability to change the genetic makeup to solve diseases,
and
save
you know what?
people's
And
lives.
you know what? When MIT gets that government money because they ended their DEI program, which is unconstitutional, MIT will get all of that government money, and your buddy who's the gene editor is going to go to MIT. Problem solved.
It will get that money until that is on Trump's blacklist as well, as 10 colleges already are in various ways.
And they're on blacklist for a reason. Why is none of this conversation about why these colleges are on blacklists and why they are deserving of punishment?
Because we don't agree, I think, on why that is. I think you think it is because of anti-Semitism or radical leftism, and I think it is because the president and the people around him see them as potential centres of dissent, centres of criticism.
You really give Donald Trump that much credit?
I do, absolutely. I mean, well, why is he then attacking law firms? Why is he attacking judges? Why is he attacking the media?
Because this is all
about hollowing out centers of dissent that could undermine his presidency.
The guy who goes out and talks to the media day in and day out doesn't like dissent and criticism?
No, he doesn't. No, I mean, that's why he says fake news every time he appears there.
Still good. But hold on. Let's get to this idea of dissent and criticism. He's going after law firms that objectively went after him and went far beyond their scope. He's going after universities that allowed for violent anti-Semitic protests, didn't enforce their own rules, didn't enforce constitutional protections of kids, and said, by the way, you can do whatever you want, you just can't have federal money. How is Harvard's federal money become a sacred cow for the left?
I have to take up the law firms issue. Robert Mueller did not go after Trump. He investigated and found, in the end, things that disappointed the left and reassured Trump. Now, on the federal money, we get back to the point that it's an investment. It is not Donald Trump's largesse. It is, what do we as a nation need? We need the biggest advancement in science and tech and math and all those things.
100% agreed. But the free market tells us that when that money goes to institutions that abide by some very simple rules, like if you foment anti-Semitic and violent protests against Jews on your campus, that you get thrown out. Pretty simple rule. There are universities like MIT. They don't seem to be all that scared of Donald Trump. They moved some of their rules. They said, fine, their federal money continues. There's going to be dissent against Trump at MIT.
The president of Harvard is very adamant that he has taken anti-Semitism seriously. Now, whether you agree with that or not, the point is that that was not the sole requirement.
The last president was too, and then she got...
The Trump administration says it should have the power to appoint auditors to its liking, to tell certain Harvard departments and faculty what they can teach. Harvard rightly thinks that is antithetical to free speech.
Right, and the Department of Justice under Joe Biden thought that they had the right to appoint auditors to all sorts of things. They required DEI and lots of other things. They had auditors in order to get public money. What's wrong with Trump saying it in the other direction?
The point is that Trump is politicizing these institutions. And once you demand loyalty in academia...
I don't think he's not demanded loyalty at all.
You're into a situation where discovery doesn't happen, because discovery happens through people who are unorthodox often, who are dissenting.
And you're saying that the only way to have discovery is at a place that flaunts the Constitution.
No, I'm saying that if you bring universities into the orbit of any president and have a demand upon them that they carry out teaching according to a president's wishes,
which he has not said. Which in no way he's a demand.
He is saying that that the government has to approve auditors of Harvard's departments and faculty.
Good to see you, Niall.
Good to see you.
First word about this in War Notes. That's your chance for an inside look at the show. It's where Niall gets all of his talking points, figures out what